When people think of Acadia National Park, they picture rugged coastlines, crashing Atlantic waves, and peaceful hikes through some of the most beautiful landscapes in the Northeast. But beneath that beauty, Acadia has a darker side. In this episode, we're taking a closer look at the deaths in Acadia National Park. The stories that don't always make the brochures, but are just as much as part of this landscape as the granite peaks and coastal trails. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine-chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everyone. My name is Elise, and I'm your host. And happy June! I literally cannot believe that it is June. It feels like just yesterday it was January. I am pumped because tomorrow is my last day of work before summer break. So, well, I guess technically Friday, but I am so excited to spend the summer out and about in the Uintas and the Wasatch and just really enjoying everything the summer has to offer. So I hope that you are excited. It's finally June, and I cannot wait to see some of your adventures online. So today we are starting a new series within Morbid Outdoors. I, as you know, love to read the incident reports of different national parks, and a lot of those happen to be fatalities. And so I am starting a deaths of series. So the first one, I'm going in alphabetical order, is Acadia. And so we're going to read some incident reports about fatalities, only fatalities in Acadia National Park. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's the interesting ones that I wanted to include. So let's start with negative reviews. Someone said, I was so psyched to come here, but there were just too many people. From what I understand, it's busy here most of the year. If you're looking for somewhere you can be by yourself, look elsewhere. On the positive side, the people at the visitor center were nice, but I really don't know how they keep a positive attitude with all of the people going in here. Someone else said, the park has beautiful scenery. However, it's way too busy, and almost every site that you wanted to go to and visit, there was no parking. Way too many people to enjoy nature. Was so disappointed in this park. Someone else said that they tried several attractions only to be stuck in traffic without parking. Felt more like a Walmart parking lot than a national park. Someone else left a 1 star and they said, this park is a disaster of human overpopulation. Made me wish for a plague. That's like an office reference. And then the last one, disappointed, nothing to see. This is a first park. I leaving a negative feedback, nothing to see. So those people don't have great grammar, but it's okay because they still got their point across. So let's talk about a little bit about Acadia. This park includes mountains, an ocean coastline, woodlands, lakes, and ponds. There's a lot of water, which means there are a lot of drowning deaths. I can't even tell you how many boating deaths and drowning deaths that I read while, I mean, it's like an absurd amount. It makes sense, but it's just really water can be very dangerous if you didn't know. I mean, I already knew that, but some people don't, I guess. So, the mountains of Acadia National Park overlook the Atlantic Ocean, island lakes, and pine forests. 26 significant mountains rise in the park, ranging from 284 feet or 87 meters at Flying Mountain Summit to 1,500 feet or 470 meters at Cadillac Mountain Summit. Cadillac Mountain, named after the French explorer Antoine de Mauffe Cadillac, is on the eastern side of the island. Cadillac is the tallest mountain along the eastern coastline of the United States. The summit of Cadillac is the first place in the U.S. where you can watch the sunrise from October 7th through March 6th due to its eastern location and height. So if you're there during that time and you're going to watch the sunrise, you will be among the first people, whoever else is there on the mountain, to watch that sunrise of that day, which is kind of cool. The coastline can be explored on guided boat trips or by sea kayak. Canoeing and kayaking are popular activities on accessible lakes and ponds. There's about 125 miles or 201 kilometers of hiking trails that traverse forests and mountains, while 45 miles or 72 kilometers of carriage roads can be hiked or bicycled. You can't do electric bikes or motorcycles, but you can, like, ride a regular bike. Now, there is a lot of history within Acadia National Park. I covered it a couple months ago in the Haunted episode. It's rich, rich with history. There's horseback riding that you can do, there's climbing. Climbing is very popular. And there's a lot of beaches. So there's really something here for everybody. Unfortunately, I have not personally been to this national park, but it is on my short list. So I really hope to go soon one day. So, the first death that I want to highlight, we have talked about on bizarre incident reports. This happened October 13th, 1987. And this is like a true crime one. You've probably heard of this case before, but this is the actual incident report. Its location was Otter Cliffs. KL and her husband were hiking around Otter Cliffs when they apparently separated in order to explore the area individually. Her husband heard a scream and discovered his spouse's body 80 feet below on the rocks at the base of the cliff. A ranger and a local EMT rappelled down to her, but she had apparently been killed instantly. The death is presumed to be accidental. Now, if you know this case, you know that that death was not accidental. Her husband pushed her on purpose and committed homicide. So he was later arrested and went to prison. But yeah, so because there are cliffs, there's a lot of falling fatalities. Because there's a lot of water, there's a lot of boating or swimming, drowning fatalities. I mean, when you go outside and you're doing things outside, like I said a million times, you are taking risk and you have to be okay with the amount of risk that you take. So let's talk about our next one. This one was Wednesday, August 23rd, 1989. This title is Search Visitor Fatality. Late on the evening of the 21st, park dispatchers were notified by local police that BK, a Catholic priest from Springfield, New York, had been reported as missing. BK had been hiking in the park. Rangers, Mount Desert Island Rescue Association people, and a National Guard medevac helicopter were employed on the subsequent search, which began in the early hours on the 22nd and continued until BK's body was located at 8:30 that morning between the Mount Menzel Trail and the shore of Long Pond. An autopsy is being conducted, but it is believed that BK's death stemmed from injuries incurred as a result of a serious fall. So another falling fatality. I mean, I'm scared of heights, so I never get close to the edge of anything. But for those of you that are not scared of heights, just because you're not scared of heights doesn't mean that you won't fall accidentally. Shit happens, it can happen in a snap of an instant. And that's why no one, scared of heights or not, should get close enough to a cliff that they could possibly fall over it. Okay, the next one, I just want to say trigger warning for suicide. Monday, June 18th, 1990, fatality, geez, I can't talk. At about 9:30 a.m. on the 14th, a park ranger saw a woman walking onto Little Moose Island in the Shudik section of the park. The island can be reached by foot at low tide. Later that afternoon, the same park ranger noticed that her vehicle was still parked at a turnout. Since the tide was then high, he waited until low tide at 6:30 p.m., then walked out to the island. He then discovered the body of 38-year-old CM of Bangor, Maine, who had died sometime during the day from a self-inflicted gunshot wound from a 22 caliber revolver. She left two notes in her personal effects describing procedures for notification of her next of kin and apologizing to the people who found her for any inconvenience she might have caused. An investigation is underway. This is something I've talked about before. Suicides happen in national parks at an alarming rate. I mean, it is very common and it's really, really sad. Moving on. Thursday, May 30th, 1991, search fatality. A major search effort concluded on May 28th with the discovery of the body of 75-year-old hiker RVH. His vehicle had been found parked off of a park road when it was determined on May 24th that he was overdue from a hike. A hasty search was begun. This fruitless effort evolved into a major search, engaging 25 park employees, 20 game wardens from the Maine Warden Service, 60 volunteers from the University of Maine Forestry School, 6 state volunteer search and rescue groups, 5 search dog teams, and 3 helicopters from the Maine Department of Forestry and Brunswick Naval Air Station. Rangers in the Navy helicopter spotted some of RVH's personal effects near the cliffs at Jordan Pond on the 28th, and rangers and wardens found his body near the base of the cliffs later that day. It appears that RVH left the hiking trail and fell approximately 300 feet to his death, which probably occurred on or about May 20th. The incident commander for the search was Norm Dodge, Acadia's chief ranger. There are a ton of falling fatalities. Again, I am never going to take that risk. And it's really sad because, you're out enjoying. Cliffs are often things that you are going to be coming into contact with if you're recreating outside. And these deaths could be prevented for the most part. Wednesday, September 1st, 1993, falling fatality. At around 2:30 p.m. on August 28th, SK and CS, both 17 and from Richmond, Virginia, left SK's parents at their campsite at Blackwoods Campground for a walk along the ocean. Just before 4 p.m., SK lost his footing on loose gravel and fell approximately 30 to 35 feet. A park visitor reported the incident to rangers at a campground a few minutes later. He was given emergency medical treatment, stabilized, carried by litter to the park loop road, and then taken to the Mount Desert Island Hospital in Bar Harbor. He was later transferred to Eastern Maine Medical Center in Bangor, where he died that evening. A much shorter fall, but still, any amount of falling can be dangerous. Monday, October 18th, 1993, climbing fatality. On October 12th, DR and PR, both 20 years old and experienced climbers, went out to the Great Head, one of the most difficult rock climbing areas in the park. They lowered themselves down a cliff to the edge of the ocean, then made their way across boulders at low tide to a sea cave where they attached their equipment to the top of the cave and walked across the ceiling. At about 5 p.m., the high tide and high surf began impeding their climb out of the cave. In order to begin the ascent, they had to make a Tarzan type swings out of the mouth of the vertical ropes. PR was the first out, and he went well into the ocean before reaching the ropes. DR followed, but got caught up in a large wave and surf. He expended a great deal of energy trying to climb, but was unable to ascend because of fatigue or hypothermia, because the pair had been in the cold and water all day, and eventually let go and was swept back into the cave. PR made his way out in the dark and reached the Bar Harbor Police Department at about 8:30. A major rescue effort was initiated, which included rangers, Mount Desert Island SAR, the Coast Guard, members of the Bar Harbor Fire Department, and students from the College of the Atlantic, and volunteers. Despite high winds and intense downpours, a member of the rescue team was able to climb down a rope to the point where he could look into the cave and see DR floating face down in the surf. Rescue efforts were halted until 6 a.m. the following morning. A climber was able to pendulum swing into the cave. He got within 15 feet of the body when the surf picked up. He was completely submerged 2 or 3 times and decided to discontinue the effort. At 1 p.m., rangers climbed down to an area that was accessible by foot. A ranger then crept across the face of the rocks and attached safety ropes that other rescuers would use to cross the bottom of the sharp cliff and recover the body. The climber then made a lateral climb back to the cave. Other climbers, using their strength in their arms and legs, and at times suspended in midair with their backs to the sea, moved carefully across the outcropping and retrieved DR's body. That was an extremely dangerous recovery because of the terrain and them being in a sea cave. And honestly, I can imagine being the guy who got out and knew that his friend or brother, they kind of had um similar initials, died. So, so sad. All right. Wednesday, March 27th, 1996, suicide. While walking on Sand Beach at 6 a.m. on March 25th, a visitor discovered the body of a young man. The victim, a 25-year-old Marine stationed at Quantico, Virginia, but originally from Norton, Kansas, had shot himself with his service issued Glock pistol. The state medical examiner pronounced death from a self inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The investigation is continuing. Every time the government is involved, it makes me raise an eyebrow when there's the government and mysterious. I mean, this isn't really a mysterious death, but he was stationed at Quantico, and then he just turns up in Maine dead. I don't know. It's a little fishy to me. Wednesday, January 15th, 1997, search and rescue falling fatality. The park began a major search for MD 37 of Old Town, Maine on January 13th. MD, an employee of nearby Jackson Laboratory, had gone jogging in the park on the afternoon of the 12th, but failed to return as scheduled. Search efforts focused on the Precipice Mountain area. MD's body was found that afternoon on the East Face Trail on the precipice. He apparently slipped on the icy trail and fell to his death. Rangers are conducting an investigation. The search involved rangers, Maine wardens, members of the Mount Desert Search and Rescue, local police, and pilots from the Maine Army National Guard who flew helicopters equipped with infrared detecting devices. Thursday, September 23rd, 1999. Double fatality. Park Dispatch received a report that two visitors had been swept into the ocean on the Shudik Peninsula just before 10 a.m. on September 20th. Ranger Bill Widener and Navy personnel responded and were soon joined by Maine Marine Patrol officers. The two bodies were located in the surf by a local fisherman who was guided in by bystanders. Neither had a pulse when he pulled them from the water. The two victims, MC 61 and RC 51, both of Charleston, Maine, were pronounced dead at a local hospital. They were evidently sightseeing along the shore at Shudik Point when a wave knocked them into the surf. Conditions were unremarkable at the time of the incident. Seas were averaging 1 to 3 feet with occasional larger swells. Witnesses report that the two were standing dangerously close to the surf at the time of the accident and had already been showered by one wave. Monday, August 7th, 2000, falling fatality. A Maryland man died in the afternoon of Friday, August 4th, after falling an estimated 200 feet from one of the park's trails. BM 51 of Gaithersburg was hiking on the Beehive Trail with a friend when he apparently took a misstep and fell. Rangers performed CPR, but the efforts were soon discontinued to the severity of BM's injuries. BM had been visiting the park with his hiking partner and their wives. Their wives were not with the two men at the time of this accident. The incident remains under investigation. This is the second fatality on park trails this week. And so that was again August 7th, 2000. Friday, April 9th, 2004, bicycling fatality. On Saturday, April 3rd, S.K. of Washougal, Washington, was killed in a bicycling accident while riding on the Park Loop Road. The Loop Road is closed to motor vehicles at this time of year, and S.K. and his son were taking advantage of good weather and car-free riding conditions. A ton of people do this in various national parks, by the way. According to SK's son, his father was traveling at approximately 20 miles an hour when the two came upon one of the road's four gates. The son was able to stop in time, but the father was launched over the front of his bicycle while attempting to stop, landing on his head and striking the gate with his lower back and pelvis. Attempts to revive him at the scene were unsuccessful, and he was later pronounced dead at the Mount Desert Island Hospital, with the cause of death attributed to a C2 spinal fracture. The investigation continues. Friday, October 24th, 2004, climber drowns in ocean near Otter Cliffs. EL 21 of Hampton, Maine, drowned while attempting to retrieve a climbing shoe from the ocean below Otter Cliffs, which is a 30-foot granite wall that rises directly from the Atlantic. The cliffs are one of the most popular climbing destinations within the park, but can be extremely treacherous during stormy weather and high tides. EL had been at the base of the cliff when surf from the high tide washed his gear out into the water. Although the gear was attached to his climbing rope, his shoe came off and started floating away. EL entered the 49-degree water to retrieve it, only to be overpowered by both the cold water and high surf. After several attempts to climb back up onto the rocks, EL went under and did not resurface. Ocean conditions precluded safe entry into the wall until Tuesday. Maine State Police divers then began searching for his body and found it 2 days later in about 18 feet of water, directly below the point where he'd entered the ocean. Both EL and his climbing partner were from Bangor, Maine area and were attending college, EL at Northeastern University and his partner at the University of Maine. Friday, June 8th, 2012. Local man found dead in marsh. JB, 85 of Bar Harbor, Maine, died while walking his dog in Acadia National Park. According to his wife, Mr. JB departed home at approximately 3:30 p.m. Wednesday afternoon to walk his dog along the Schooner Head Path in Acadia National Park. He was expected to return home within 45 minutes. When Mr. JB did not return home within an hour, his wife became concerned and began to look for him. In the meantime, two joggers found Mr. JB's body face down in the small marsh located along the path. At 4:45 p.m., the National Park Service was notified by Bar Harbor Dispatch, and the park rangers responded. The cause of death is under investigation. Mr. JB is survived by his wife, SB of Bar Harbor, and their children in New Jersey. I didn't find any follow-up on that one. That one it's pretty interesting. He was elderly. He could have had a medical event or fallen, but it's just really odd to me. What was his cause of death? Did they ever release that? I couldn't find it. What happened to the dog? I don't know. Was he robbed? I don't know. So that's why I included that, was just an interesting one. April 26th, 2023, teenager dies in fall. On April 14th, a 17-year-old was hiking near Otter Cliff with friends when the individual fell about 25 feet. National Park Service staff and Mount Desert Island Search and Rescue responded and attempted life-saving measures, but they were unsuccessful. July 24th, 2024, kayaker fatality. On July 13th, a 73-year-old went kayaking alone from the end of Sealy Road in Bar Harbor, Maine. After failing to return, a family member notified the Bar Harbor Police Department. Personnel from the Maine Marine Patrol, U.S. Coast Guard, and National Park Service initiated a search. National Park Service staff found the individual's deceased body in the water near Thrum Cap, a small island near their put-in. The individual was wearing a life jacket. The kayak was not found. The individual will be examined by the Office of Chief of Medical Examiner's Office. So I included this one because he was wearing a life jacket, and, that I preach a lot, "Wear a life jacket, wear a life jacket, wear a life jacket." Yes, you should, but that doesn't mean that something still can't happen. I find it interesting that they didn't find the kayak, and again, it's just kinda like, hiking by yourself. People say, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't go kayaking alone." There's risk in everything, anything could happen, life jacket or no. It's just you need to be taking the extra steps to be, safe. July 9th, 2025, climbing accident and two fatalities in 1 week. On June 23rd, a 20-year-old fell about 20 feet while climbing at the south wall of Champlain Mountain. A group of other climbers carried the individual to the Park Loop Road, and personnel from Bar Harbor, Maine Fire Department and the National Park Service responded to the scene. The fire personnel transported the patient by ambulance to medical care. On June 25th, an individual collapsed and hit their head near the summit of Cedar Swamp Mountain. Personnel from the National Park Service and local EMS responded to the scene and found the individual not breathing and without a pulse. They were able to sustain the patient until transport by Life Flight of Maine to Eastern Maine Medical Center. The individual later passed away from their injuries. On June 30th, a 40-foot sailboat ran aground near Cape Ann Ledge on the southern side of Isle Ohaut. Ohaut. I don't know, it looks French. A 72-year-old and two other individuals were on board. The boat broke apart on the rocks, and all three went overboard. They were all wearing life jackets and were in the water for over an hour. The two members of the party were able to drag the 72-year-old to shore, but the individual was unresponsive. National Parks Service personnel responded to the scene to support the Maine Marine Patrol. The 72-year-old was pronounced deceased, and their body was transported to Ellsworth for medical examination. The two survivors were transported to Stonington for medical attention and were released later that day. So, Maine looks beautiful. Acadia looks beautiful. But there's always a dark side to our national parks. And I hope you kind of enjoyed that. It's like a little mixture of bizarre incident reports, but these are just going to be focused on fatalities. Now, like I said, it's not an exhaustive list because there's so much water. I read so many of like fishermen or local people out on boats, and then their boats were found, they weren't on it. I could read just the boating accidents for probably like 4 hours. So I didn't include a ton of those, but I let me know if you kind of like this. I'm morbid as hell, so I love to learn about death and other bad things that happen within our wild outdoors. So I actually enjoyed putting this together. But if this isn't something that you would wanna listen to in the future, just let me know. I'm open to feedback. I think most people will like it, but I don't know. So, yeah, I was gonna go in alphabetical order, so Acadia and then whichever one comes after that, and just kinda go down all the national parks. Some of them will have more, some of them will have less, but I just thought it was something else I could do. So, as always, recreate responsibly and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. You can also join us on Patreon for early and ad-free content. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.